We have a lot to get to. A draft that we'll talk about this week and free agency day. The Sabres signed a lot of players, but not the ones that I'm guessing Sabre fans wanted them to see signed. We'll get to it all coming up here in the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Playoffs have wound down, but the sports don't stop. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Sneaky Joe DiBiase, a lot to get to on today's show. It's free agency day. It's also our first show since the NHL draft. We will save a lot of the draft talk for later on this week. We'll get to it all, though. Consta Helenius. We're going Helenius, not Helenius. Helenius is what he said after the draft. His last name is pronounced as, so that's what we're rolling with. He is a player that I like a lot in terms of the prospects. We talked to him a little bit about him last week. I think it fits really well with what they need in their pipeline. They did some other things later in the draft that fits with their pipeline as well. We'll talk more about that coming up this week. We'll get Hadi Kalakash, Locked On NHL prospects along as well. A lot to get to this week, but there's a ton to get to today. It was fast and it was furious. Before noon, even, right? It started at like 11, the action. If you were on Twitter today, it was nuts. Now, we tried to keep you plugged in as much as possible. If you were a subscriber to our Locked On Sabres text line, you got all the news immediately, sometimes before it even reached Twitter. We got that news to you about Jason Zucker, about Nicolas Aube-Kubel, about Sam Lafferty, about Dennis Gilbert, about Jacob Bryson, all the players that the Sabres signed today. We had the scoop for you. We had it right there for you. We had some banter back and forth about those signings. If you are not a subscriber already, you want to be a part of our Locked On Sabres text line throughout the summer, maybe you're not going to be paying as much attention. And if they make this wild trade in the middle of the summer, will be the ones you'll find out first from. If you're not already a subscriber, join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres to sign up. We'll get some texts this week as well that we saw from our listeners today. But a lot to get to. And really, I kind of want to, we've heard from Kevin Adams too. He just wrapped up his press conference. I got some thoughts on some crazy things that he had to say today, in my opinion. On the overall, though, it's a disappointing day. It's a disappointing weekend. I was hopeful. Call me naive. I got myself to be optimistic. Going into the weekend, going into the week, the draft, free agency, they know it's time to win. Lindy has said it's time to win. So, all right, actions speak louder than words. Let's see your actions match the words. The words say, we want to win right now. We want to make deals. We want to spin futures for right now. That's how they were talking. Then it was time to do it, and they didn't really do it. And now it's excuse-making time, right? And listen, some of the excuses are real. Some of the reasons why the Sabres sit here today without the top two things that it was said they wanted the most, top six winger and third line center, without adding those two things. There are real reasons why that didn't happen. How could you possibly, though, feel in a good place about this team after they didn't address their top two needs? And maybe they still will. The offseason, as I saw on Twitter today from a lot of people, hey, the offseason doesn't end today. But 80% of the offseason ended today. 80% of the offseason ended this weekend. All of those available players in free agency, all of those players that we thought could get traded around the draft. And there were some, not as many as we thought. Martin Necas didn't get traded. So a lot of guys didn't get dealt. But a bunch of guys did. And the Sabres end up Jason Zucker, Nicolas Aube-Kubel, Sam Lafferty, Dennis Gilbert, and they bring back Jacob Bryson. And of course, they trade over the weekend for I keep forgetting Beck Malenstyn. Even him, like, I've got to remember his name because crazy. Like, I follow the league, I watch the league, I play the video game, I bet the sport, I watch the playoffs, and Beck Malenstyn is not someone I had in my head, not had in my database. I saw that notification on my watch and went, who? So looked him up. Shot blocker, big hitter. Really the theme of what they've done so far, they've remade the bottom six. And they haven't really remade the top six. They haven't improved the top six. But they've remade the bottom six, especially the fourth line. Beck Malenstyn, Nicolas Aube-Kubel, Sam Lafferty, to go with Jordan Greenway already in the pipeline, or already on the roster, and Peyton Krebs already on the roster. Count that as 5. 5 guys, put them in ink for the Sabres bottom six. Their bottom six, I think they've done a decent job. I think their bottom six is faster. I think their bottom six is more physical. I think their bottom six is better defensively, on the penalty kill especially. Malenstyn is a great shot blocker. Aube-Kubel is an incredible forechecker. And Lafferty is physical. And really, Malenstyn and Aube-Kubel are physical in their own right. We know Krebs' game is a little bit of that. We know Greenway's game is that. They're a big physical team now at the depth of their roster. The other bottom six forward is Jason Zucker bottom six. Is Zach Benson bottom six? I have to imagine one of them is a bottom six forward. My problem is that they should probably both be bottom six forwards, and there should be a third line center option that's not what's presently on the roster. So as we stare at the bottom six at this moment in time, I like the players they've brought in for it. I like Malenstyn is way an overpayment for the draft pick. There's no way that dude should cost a second round pick. I like the player. I like the fit. Should never cost a second round pick. Second round picks are not everything. It's like a 50-50 shot the guy even makes the NHL. But 26-year-old fourth liner that just became an NHL regular last year, that guy never gets traded for a second round pick. That guy gets traded for a 5th. That guy gets traded for a 6th. That's Eric Robinson, conditional 7th type of trade. Why in the world did they have to trade a second round pick for him? Beats me. Lafferty, all right, fourth line center, physical, scored 13 goals last year. He's the one that I'm okay with, but I'm not really a big fan of his game. His defensive numbers are just okay. Offensively, as a fourth liner, just okay. He's a guy. He's not terrible. He's probably an upgrade over what Tyson Jost was in their bottom six because he's a bigger body and he'll at least give you some of the physicality. I really like the Nicolas Aube-Kubel signing for the bottom six. That guy is super fast. He is a great forechecker. He's got decent skill, nothing crazy. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's been in the league for 5 years and his career high in goals is 11. So nothing crazy to write home about. Last year, 6 goals, 10 assists, 16 points for Aube-Kubel in Washington. But I think he's an incredible defender. The numbers, Evolving Hockey, 96th percentile for defense. This guy is a great defender. And I think he's going to be very valuable in that role in their bottom six. I like that signing a lot. 1-year deal, $1.6 million. Not bad at all. In terms of the contracts they've given out, they still have to sign Malenstyn. But, you know, $2 million, 2 years for Lafferty. Okay, I don't love the second year, but the money is nothing. $1.5 million for Aube-Kubel is fantastic. And then there is Zucker. 1 year, $5 million might imply that he's bound for the top six. I don't really know what they want to do with that other spot. They don't have much skill. They don't have much scoring in their bottom six. Okay, I like that you've improved yourselves physically, and defensively, but did you go too far? Because now 5 of your 6 bottom 6 forwards, I don't count on to give you anything offensively. And that is where my concern would lie right now. Did you go too far towards physicality and defense? And now you're going to have a problem with secondary scoring, because I think there's going to be not one, but two lines on this Sabres team that are going to have a lot of trouble producing offense. And can you win that way? You better be damn good defensively if you're going to go that route. And I am very concerned right now that secondary scoring is going to be a big problem for this team. In part because, again, no third-line center. Adam Henrique, he's still out there. He was my favorite idea for a third-line center. I said offer him 3 years, $6 million per year. Bring him over from Edmonton and Anaheim, who we split last year between. He is great face-offs. Very good offensively still, even at age 34. He had 51 points last year. Bring him in. He'll give you everything. Little defense, more offense, secondary scoring, face-offs. Let Adam Henrique be one of their big additions this offseason to be their third-line center, but they didn't do that. Not yet. He's still signed or still unsigned. At the moment, my biggest problem with their bottom six is that Peyton Krebs is currently their third-line center. And I did a show a couple weeks ago. What does a disaster offseason look like for the Buffalo Sabres? And part of that blueprint for what the disaster looked like was that Peyton Krebs was your third-line center. Now, one hope I really have, one thing I'm rooting for, is Krebs to get knocked down to the fourth line again, and Lafferty to play the wing, him, Aube-Kubel, Malenstyn. One of those guys is always a healthy scratch, or one of those guys, or maybe they're all playing because there's an injury. But all those guys are fourth line. And you've got Benson on the third line, maybe, or Zucker. You've got Greenway on the third line. And then what I am at a point of, and I didn't want to be here, and I really would like to see the Sabres correct this and still make a move to prevent this from being the case. But at the moment, I'm crossing my fingers, because the best case scenario at this moment in time for third line center is that Matt Savoy shows up at training camp and is ready to go. And I have no idea if he's going to be ready to go. I've got no idea if he's matured enough this offseason, he's gotten any thicker physically, where he's ready to make the NHL. But I'll tell you, there's a spot open for him. If he comes into training camp and looks awesome, and in the preseason looks awesome, he has the camp and preseason that Benson did last year, I think he's your third-line center. I think he opens the season as your third-line center, because he is someone that you could keep Greenway on that line and you could still have that physicality, right, with him, and then you have a whole fourth line for all of that. But Savoy could take a third line that would be centered by Krebs and include Greenway and Benson, and you might think, oh, it's more of a defensive line, it's a physical line, it's a line I don't really count on to score much because Krebs hasn't shown me anything. Savoy would give you, in my mind, more upside offensively. Him and Benson maybe could mesh well together. Maybe him and Zucker could mesh well together. And you could have a third line that has some physicality to it, has some defense to it, but also has some scoring to it. It would be well balanced to me if Matt Savoy can win a job. And that is I think he's one of the big winners on this day, because the Sabres did not add a third line center. And I think it's crazy that it's July 1st and they have not done that. What about the top six? Benson versus Zucker, Skinner being bought out, and really not replacing him all that well. We'll get to that when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented here on the show by FanDuel Sportsbook. If you're listening here on Monday night, the soccer game is still coming. You've got the U.S. and Uruguay tonight in Copa America. You get your odds for that over at FanDuel. You can bet on anytime goal scorer if you want Christian Pulisic or others. I love sports. Love them all. I never want them to stop. Playoffs are done. We got fewer games. The sports aren't sportsing like we want them to, but FanDuel lets us keep the sports going wherever we want. All you got to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime that we're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. It's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, we are previewing, or recapping, I should say, free agency as the Sabres making a couple of moves. We'll get to Adam's role in all of this. Of course, he is like it's his job to bring in the players. But their cap situation, he made some comments about spending to the cap. And another comment that I was kind of scratching my head at from today, his place in all of this and where the Sabres are at with their general manager after this weekend. Fans are not in a good place. Fans are not feeling good and optimistic about this team right now. And I think most of that is within the top six. More even than third line center. But third line center is big too for this. It was said by Elliot Friedman, other insiders, and it's basically assumed because they bought out Jeff Skinner and there's no obvious answer for them to play in the top six. Oh, they want a top six forward. That's why they've been connected to guys like Martin Necas in trade rumors. It's why they were connected to a guy like Logan Couture, maybe in trade rumors for a moment in time. They've been connected to a lot of guys. They're poking their head around. Why? They probably want one. And we'll talk about Adams again a little bit more, but Adams said that we're still open to adding a top six winger when asked. And if you were set, if you thought, oh, Zucker's top six or Benson's going to be relied to be top six, then you wouldn't say you're open to it. But he said they're open to it. So that my guess is they're still looking to add in that department. But will they be able to? We've talked about other struggles. I don't know that they're going to be able to. Right now, you are hoping that one of two things is going to happen to fill in the spot that Jeff Skinner, whose bad year was 24 goals last year, who scored 92 goals in the last 3 seasons, 92 goals, an average of almost 31 goals a year, is going to be replaced by either Jason Zucker, who they signed today, and we'll get into him, or 19-year-old Zach Benson. And I'm open to Zach Benson being able to play in the top six. Of course I am. He could take a big step from last year to this year. We just saw Peterka do it. I'm very open to Benson doing that. How about counting on it, though? Counting on it seems risky. Doesn't seem like it's smart business to count on the 19-year-old to go from 30 points last year to 50, 60 this year. Shouldn't be counting on that. And then what about Zucker? Zucker, veteran player. I think there are some deeper numbers that show that the guy had a down year last year and there's still a good player in there. He kind of got buried on the depth chart in Nashville and Arizona last season, playing less than 14 minutes a night, which was, almost a 2-minute difference from the year before in Pittsburgh. Very much saw worse teammates that he played with. And what happened? He went down from 27 goals to 14 goals last year. But 2 years ago, playing with mostly Evgeny Malkin in Pittsburgh, 27 goals, 21 assists, 48 points. Not bad. He's a fast player. He's not that big, 5'11", 192, but a nice shot. Decent hands, very good speed. I think he's a better version of Connor Sherry. That's what he reminds me of. A little bit bigger, a little bit similar speed. Sherry was a very fast player, better shot, and better hands. So better version of Connor Sherry is what comes to mind for me for Jason Zucker. The problem is you're counting on him to return to form from what he was 2 years ago. And let's keep in mind, 27 goals, that'd be great. That's a good season for him. Everyone that just said Jeff Skinner has to go because he had a down year for Jeff Skinner, 24 goals, was about as good as Jason Zucker's top year, 27 goals. I think they might have downgraded. I think Zucker is a better all-around player. He's not amazing defensively. We're talking like a 40th percentile defensive forward. So a little bit below average, but near the average. Skinner was like 0, like worse than the league. So you are getting a better 200-foot player. No doubt about that. And you're getting faster. That's really a good theme of today, by the way. I should have mentioned with the bottom six. Aube-Kubel, Lafferty, Malenstyn, Zucker. The Sabres got fast. They got fast in the last couple of days. Did they get better? I hesitate to say that because, listen, top six is more important than bottom six. It's just the way it is. It's why the guys get paid more. Top six is more important than bottom six. And Jeff Skinner out, Jason Zucker in. Jeff Skinner has scored 43 more goals in the last 3 seasons than Jason Zucker. Zucker in the last 3 years, 49 goals. Jeff Skinner, 92. 92 to 49. Massive difference. Skinner, who, by the way, the report today is that he's going to go to Edmonton, maybe. That dude's going to score 50 goals with Connor McDavid next year and win the cup. He's going to score 50 goals if he plays with Connor McDavid next year. I think the Sabres downgraded in their top 6. It's about scoring. My whole thesis on Skinner was, if you don't have a spot for him in the top 6, that's when you buy him out, and that's what you do. But guess what? They have a spot for him in the top 6. Today they have one. They haven't added a top 6 forward. I'm gonna retain some patience here. Not much, but a little bit. The reason not much, because you might tell me, oh, there's months to go to the draft. There have been years that have gone by now, and they have not made the move they need to make on this front. Years that have gone by. So I'm not assuming they're making a trade between now and the start of the season. How could I possibly expect that that's going to happen? If they do, great. They go trade for Martin Necas. They go trade for Nikolai Ehlers. Awesome. Because that is good. That's what we're talking about. That starts to bring the roster a little bit more together. But right now, I'm just not liking their options. I'm praying that these kids do it. Benson or Kulik or Roseanne, somebody from Rochester or Benson at 19, come and save me. And that is not where they should be in a year where they've got to make the playoffs. When they said it was time to win, that is not where they should be. So Zucker, overall, I like the signing. 1 year, $5 million. I'm not committing to him long-term at all. They were $30 million under the cap. I don't care what they give him on a 1-year deal. Give him $8 million if you want. It doesn't matter. $5 million on a 1-year deal, fine. Because I do think the player is better than the numbers he had last year. I do expect that he's going to score 20 goals for the Sabres this year. And I do expect he's someone that can play in your top 6 if you really need him to. You probably don't love that. And you probably would rather have him in the bottom 6, but if he's in your bottom 6, really good secondary scorer. But counting on him or Benson to fill in for Skinner on the second line with Cousins and Quinn, or on the top line with Tage and Tuck, I can't believe I can believe it. Of course I can. But at the same time, I can't believe they haven't ended up in a better spot. They have not ended up with a better idea than Jason Zucker. When it's time to win, when all these other teams are signing big-name players, here's at the Sabres, still unable to get that done. So what does that mean for Kevyn Adams? We'll get into that when we come back and what Adams had to say defending all of this. Can't believe some of the reasoning behind that. That's coming up here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented here on the show by Gametime. Gametime, authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, all the leagues, killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat. That's my favorite feature because you can look right at exactly what you'll be looking at when you're sitting down. Their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Last-minute deals I mentioned, they're available right after the start of the event, sometimes even an hour after. Save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Their lowest price guarantee, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a ticket in the same section for less. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Final segment here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Reminder, check us out. Join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres to sign up for our Locked On Sabres text line. So we did have some comments from Kevyn Adams. Did his press conference after all of these signings. And if you are on Sabres Twitter, it didn't go particularly great. My reaction to a lot of the comments was an eye roll or a what did you just say? A lot of that. I don't know. Adam's in a tough spot, right? Like, I am not giving him a stamp of approval at all. But he's probably got a league that doesn't want to play here. He's got an owner that might not want to spend right to the cap and spend all the money on this team. I mean, those are really the top two, right? Those are the two biggest reasons why he's got a tough job. But it's also the job. Other GMs do it. Other GMs do it all the time. Bad teams that have missed the playoffs for years figure out a way to go big swings. Ottawa has made big swings all the time. And I know it doesn't work for them, but Claude Giroux in free agency, Jacob Chychrun, Alex DeBrincat. Again, I know that doesn't work all the time because two of those three are already off the Senators. They traded Chychrun today to Washington. But Detroit, They got Patrick Kane. They signed David Perron. They signed JT Compher. Like, they find ways to get players to come there. Has it worked? No, but they don't have the youth talent yet that the Sabres do. So if the Sabres had made moves like that, it probably would have worked better. Columbus got Johnny Gaudreau a couple years ago. Again, I'm bringing up examples where it hasn't worked. There are countless examples of good teams doing it, right? Jake Gensel to Tampa is one that happened today. That's easy. The Predators signed everybody today. All in. They get Stamkos. They get Marcia Show. They get Brady Shea. Nashville gets everybody done. They've got to be in the NHL. They don't feel like a real team right now because they're not capable of making the signings they need. But all that being said, then Adams tries to explain it away. And that's, to me, where he starts to get into but he gets into more trouble. I mentioned the comment about his philosophy on the top six. He says he's still open to it. I take that to mean that he's still looking into it. Other things that he had to say on the cap. He said on the cap, not concerned about spending to the cap, have to leave room for future contract extensions. No, you don't. Or actually, you already have, is what I really mean to say. That reasoning for not spending to the cap is completely flawed. They spent money today on one-year contracts. Next year at this time, Aube-Kubel's not on your books. Beck Malenstyn might not be on your books. He's not under contract right now. I should have mentioned Dennis Gilbert, another signing they made today. Third pair defenseman, seventh defenseman, Buffalo natives, junior Sabre guy who actually a lot of the stat guys like. I might want to predict he overtakes Connor Clifton in their lineup in the top six. I like that signing a lot for them as a very cheap, under the radar depth signing. They need bigger than that, but I like that signing to play over Clifton. He's a one-year contract. $800,000 anyway. Bryson's a one-year contract. They have next year, because they signed a bunch of one-year contracts, $38 million. $38 million in cap space. That's before the cap goes up even more. So yeah, you have to save money for some young players. Who are those young players? Who's up next year? The three guys that are up next year: Peterka, Quinn, Byram. I would never do this. Adams would never do this. If you set aside $10 million per year each to those three players, $10 million each, you'd still have $8 million left over. They're fine. They have the room. They can plenty afford one or two big priced free agents and still have the room they need to pay those three guys next year if they want to do it. You have the room. Not a good excuse. Of the excuses Adams gave today, that one on spending to the cap is flawed. I don't buy that for a second. And I know Luukkonen and Jokiharju and Krebs need contracts too, but you've got room. You're not up against the cap. Other teams are over the cap. Florida is over the cap after signing Sam Reinhart. They got to figure out how to sign Anton Lundell. Guess what? They're going to figure out how to sign Anton Lundell. Teams figure it out. Good teams figure it out. The Sabres have to save $10 million in cap for a year and not spend to the cap because of that. I don't buy it for a second. Go give out more one-year contracts if you want. I can't believe that part of it. So, what else did he have to say? He talked about Krebs. Third-line center, still a young player, showed signs of starting to understand defensive side of the game, great vision, and his offensive skill. It's a chance of playing higher in the lineup. A chance. I mean, right now he's penciled in to play higher in the lineup. Great vision and offensive skill. I got to see it, man. It's year 3 now. I haven't seen enough flashes, and he finally got a chance with some more skilled players, and Skinner and Benson, and we didn't see any sign, any improvement over what he had done with Okposo and Girgensson. So I'm not buying that as well. The physical end of the game and talking about the playoff games as a reason why Zucker was signed and Lafferty being winning hockey players. All right, fine. But I needed to hear more about what the style of the team is going to be, what the skill of the team is. I heard a change of tune. He also talked about trades. He definitely did not like the idea that he isn't willing to pay the price for good players. And that I might be willing to buy. Of the excuses, that's the one I might be willing to buy. The one point he made was, it's been said that I might not be willing to pay the price to get these top 6 players, but yet those top 6 players weren't traded. So maybe that team just doesn't want to trade him. And that was maybe him talking about Nikolai Ehlers or Martin Necas. So, all right, I can listen to that. But again, you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt in these things when it's year 4 and we're still waiting for these types of moves. So approval rating for Kevyn Adams, certainly, it's not like it was super high to begin with among Sabre fans today or before today, but it definitely went down after today. And the GM, Friedman, talking about the GM maybe being someone that could lose his job if this year goes very poorly. I think fans are going to approach that. If they have a slow start to the season after not making any swing in this offseason, at least yet, if they have a slow start to the regular season, fans are going to be calling for his head. No doubt fans are going to be calling for his head. All right. Maybe we get something. Maybe they'll surprise us all and they'll give us a big trade, but I'm just not counting on it. Maybe they'll sign Adam Henrique, who is easily the best idea for me left on free agency. That's going to do it for us. We'll talk prospects. We'll talk Consta Hellenis, their draft class from the weekend. We'll have Hadi Kalakash on this week from Locked On NHL Prospects. I'll have some line combinations too amongst what they've done. Some line combos that I really think are the best you could do for the start of the season. All that ahead. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you following this team. It's not easy. It's not easy to stay plugged in and to be interested in this team these days, but we have great listeners and they come back every time. So come back next time. We'll talk draft. Maybe we'll get a little bit more optimistic talk when we're talking Consta Hellenis. That's going to be next time here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.